Okay, so if we can start with the simple one, have you always wanted to work in the IT industry, or was it something you sort of arrived at later on in career? What, how did you get there?
Yeah, so I actually growing up I was a bit of a technophobe, so it definitely wasn't something that I ever thought I'd end up in. So I when I was about 10 or 12, my school actually didn't even have a dedicated IT teacher. So when I got to senior school, I was actually quite far behind in terms of tech and IT. Um, and I actually kind of avoided it because I wasn't very good at it because I was behind. But I had some friends who worked in tech in startups in general, to be honest, and I could see that they were thriving, and I didn't know what I wanted to do coming out of university. So I decided I'll apply for a startup and see where that takes me, and I landed in a tech startup in a graduate rotation program actually. And that was my real first exposure to the tech industry in terms of career. And yeah, I've never really looked back. It was quite a steep learning curve, but it sort of grabbed me, and I just have thrived ever since.
Okay, so in terms of from that start to where you are today, what jobs have you had? Yeah, so worked for different companies and doing different things. So just give us a flavour of the career today.
Yeah, so when I was at university, I did some tutoring. So I was quite interested for a time in becoming a teacher, and I did some tutoring. I also joined some sort of homework clubs after school to help sort of 8 to 10-year-olds with their homework from slightly more disadvantaged backgrounds, and that was a career path I was quite interested in. But then I actually, out of university, my first job was actually in market research, doing sort of more qualitative research, so the interviewing side and sort of group workshops and things like that, which I did enjoy, but it wasn't what I desperately wanted to do. And like I said, yeah, I saw some of my friends and family working in startups, so that was the route I decided to go down.
Yep. So in terms of sort of the IT specific stuff, you say you joined a startup. So is that where you still are, and what have you done during your time there?
Yeah, so I'm still part of the wider group that the startup I initially joined is part of. It's called the Goodlord Group. I've recently moved over to our sister company Vouch, who I'm really enjoying working in. I started in the tech support team actually, which was really just helping our customers with their day-to-day queries. And then I moved into a product management role as the sort of opportunity arose, and I felt that I was able to provide some value. And so my sort of tech world has always been part of the startup that I'm working in, or the group that I'm working in currently. But I've also been lucky enough to get some mentors from outside of the current group that I work in. So companies like Intercom, where I've got a wonderful mentor there as well.
And just quickly, in terms of what Goodlord and then Vouch where you are now, what sort of angle are they? Where does the IT come in?
Yeah, so we consider ourselves tech companies. We work in the prop tech industry, so property tech or rental tech, to be even more specific, where we help. Well, our mission is to create the best renting experience in the world. So we build software to help with the sort of tenancy transaction. And Vouch specifically, we have software to help with the referencing part of the journey. So all of the tech that we build has real world impact and helps people in something that is quite a stressful time, and seeing the impact is pretty great actually. So from the tech side, it all has the real world impact.
Okay, and in terms of the IT industry, you said that you had sort of friends working there, which was part of the reason you went in. So were you expect what sort of were you expecting to find in the workplace? Were you expecting to find a nice balance of men and women work together? Did you already know that the IT industry was perhaps a little male dominated? I say, what were your expectations, and maybe what was the reality?
Yeah, so for context, the friends and family that I was sort of drawing upon their experience to guide me was my brother, so a male, and also a really good friend who's female. So they both had quite different, they were working in different sectors, and they both had different sort of experiences. So I was actually personally expecting it to be more male dominated, because I know from sort of past experience, even just at school, that's where, you know, it was very rare to see a girl who chose IT as, you know, a subject that they wanted to continue with past GCSE, whereas it was very male dominated. So I sort of expected that. It wasn't necessarily the reality across the wider sort of business itself, but in terms of the actual sort of teams where you are doing, you know, the software engineering, product management, that was still very driven by men at the time, but now it's not so much the case.
Okay, and in terms of sort of, we call them challenges, well-related challenges, have any of those, do you think, been gender related, or have you had a pretty good experience of, you know, the males and females just working together without any particular issues that you've been aware of?
So I think my experience has definitely been a positive one. I've been probably quite lucky. I know that that's not the case for everyone, so I definitely know how lucky I am. But I've never sort of experienced any challenges specifically related to my gender per se. There is, I guess, I've sort of alluded to it before, but I think that there's a societal sort of influence which probably has impacted some of the challenges that I do face. So a challenge that I would say I do face is, or it was when I first joined, was just not knowing very much about tech, not being able to communicate with a sort of technical language. And I think that started from school because, you know, it wasn't considered a girly thing, and I never really was interested in it or shown a path into it as something as a woman, you know, as something that was a good career path. So from that respect, I think that gender does cause challenges or societal influence on of gender, but in terms of my actual day-to-day and interaction with people and ability to perform my role, I don't where I am, at least, I don't feel the impact of gender.
And if I may ask, I mean, is a startup, one often thinks of startups as being sort of young, energetic folks as opposed to older folks like myself. I mean, so what's the profile of the company? Is it a sort of fairly youngish workforce, and therefore maybe they are less hung up with, you know, issues around gender and diversity than maybe older generations? Is that fair to say, or is that not the case?
I definitely think that is very fair to say. We are quite a young profile, especially when I started. We're not as young as we were when I first started, and maybe that's because a lot of people have stayed and we've all grown up in the company. But yeah, the profile, particularly when I started, was a very young profile, very energetic and very diverse. And we still are energetic and diverse, but not quite as young.
Fair enough. And in terms, I mean, this question may not apply again, but you said you haven't really, you know, experienced any of the sort of gender issues that maybe, you know, other folks do. But are you aware of things that could be improved for the industry? I mean, it's like, whether it's in your company specifically, it sounds a pretty healthy place to work, but or just, you know, in the industry, the things you think still need to be looked at. I mean, you reference obviously at school, whether you were actively dissuaded from going into IT or it just wasn't made attractive to you and your peers. What sort of things do you think might be done to help the situation?
Yeah, 100%. There's definitely things that I think can be done, and I think it does start from a young age of like the type of things that you think you can do as an adult. And I think that having sort of more female role models that are in the tech industry would help a lot with just opening people's eyes to what they can achieve as they grow up and as they move into the working environment. So I think that's probably one of the first things that I would say is just having those female role models from the tech industry. I also I think that there's lots of different routes into tech, and they're not all necessarily immediately clear. I wouldn't consider my route super straightforward particularly into getting into a specifically tech related role. But there are lots of different routes into it. So I think that, having more visibility about how to actually get into tech would help. And I mean, to be fair, that probably isn't gender specific, but would help in general. I think a lot of people are just like, I want to do this, but I just don't know how to go ahead with it. So I think that's something that, schools, universities, colleges, even apprenticeships can really help guide as well. So yeah, and I think in general, diversity is something that needs to be improved upon. So not like gender diversity in tech is obviously a massive issue, but in general, diversity would help a lot with encouraging different types of people to join tech itself.
Okay, and in terms of your experiences in the tech industry, for folks looking at getting in, whether it's from ending their educational path and looking what to do, or and some people mid-career, looking at maybe, are there any downsides that you've experienced, or is it just? It sounds like, as I say, you've got a lovely atmosphere in the company and stuff. But are there any things you'd warn people to look out for, or would you just say go for it, embrace it, and see where it takes you?
Yeah, I think my experience has been wonderful, and I would hope that everyone's experience is like that. I know it's probably not, but I think there are some downsides to tech, and it does depend on the culture that you're within. And so I think some cultures will have quite a like a crunch time culture where they're expected to work 90 hours a week, like we're hearing at Twitter at the moment. And but that's not I don't think that's even the majority of tech companies. I think you just want to find a good culture that you can fit in and contribute to, and hopefully you wouldn't experience any problems. But obviously that's coming from probably quite a privileged position of having found a culture that I love and thrive in. So I think in general, there are some, tech is quite a tough discipline, tough industry. But if you have an open mind and have a sort of attitude of continuous learning, then it's a place that most people can thrive in.
Okay, and maybe just finish with, in terms of how your friends and family outside of work, just interested, are any of them sort of like, wow, you're in the IT space, that's a bit weird, or are they all just perfectly accepting? I mean, well, I suppose some friends curious as to why are you in the IT, because it's full of old blokes in doing programming, and it's all a bit, or are they all very much accepting and understanding of what it is you do and why it's such a good place to be?
Yeah, I think in general my friends and family are very accepting. I think some of my older relatives definitely have that perception of tech as being sort of male dominated and slightly sort of older men who are locked in the basement somewhere coding in a dark room, which really isn't the case of what tech is, at least nowadays. But it's just about explaining to them what my company is like, what my role is like, you know, what I do day to day. And I think once they understand that, then they get it, and they're like, actually, that sounds, I wish I had that opportunity when I was your age. So yeah, most of them, my younger friends and relatives all are like, oh, that's pretty cool that you work in tech. And you know, some of them even asked me how to get into it. So
okay, that's lovely. It's been good to chat to you, Frankie, so appreciate your time. Thank you very much
thank you so
indeed.
much.